certain facilities within a matter of an hour.
Yeah.
But all automated computer-wise. Yeah. Now, you could hack into... Could they hack into that and control the drones and do that?
Well, and there have been some, amusing little TV shows that have covered that issue. I think there was a NCIS and a episode of Scorpion where they looked at basically what happens if somebody hacks the drones and starts driving them against us instead of for us. And yeah, I think things like that are doable. We've seen that kind of stuff pulled off.
Take over a military.
Yeah,
military satellite.
Yeah. I think it's important to be having that discussion. The problem that we face here as a country, quite frankly, is that the Senate and the Congress, the people who make the laws that ultimately drive the policy, are a bunch of technologically inept old-timers.
They have no clue.
Yeah, and I hate to pick. I just turned 62, so it's not like I'm the super millennial or anything.
But you're a geeky 62.
Yeah. I'm a boomer, but these people, for whatever reason, are nearly all attorneys. They have no technical background. We have very few people in the Congress that have any kind of a technology background, and they don't listen to people that they have either on staff or who are lobbying or whatever.
It's a very top-down, I'm in power and I don't need to listen to you attitude.
And attorneys,
and it's unhealthy.
Yeah, attorneys are wired up to fight. Their whole worldview is adversarial, me against you, us against them, prove it to me, what have you got for evidence? And it's kind of like these people are going to wait until it's happened once, and then there will be like, oh, holy cow, we didn't see that coming. We need to do something. There'll be a whole bunch of new laws that won't do squat. That'll be probably impactful on our rights under the Constitution, just like
a bunch of Keystone cops running around every time there's a problem instead of actually planning it out.
We'll end up federalizing some other poor group of employees like we did with the airport screeners after 9/11, and it created the TSA for no good reason.
Well, but this is kind of serious when you have a group of NSA employees doing it through a film, because they can't come out as whistleblowers because everybody knows what happened to Snowden.
Yeah, whistleblowers. Yeah.
And everything. Yeah, I mean, they're very attacked right now. That's very well documented. Yeah. And everything is top secret. Well, which is ridiculous. Like everything is top secret now.
Yeah.
So,
and the motivation.
How do you make something into a national debate that needs to be a national debate when everything is top secret?
Yeah. The reason that these people came forward is, quite frankly, a lot of people who are working in the NSA and for FBI and other agencies that are covered in their homeland and people in the military actually do care very deeply about the welfare of the United States and the welfare of the people of the United States, and they're there doing what they consider to be important work. If it's not God's work, it's like right next. They're patriots in the true sense of the term. My opinion of Snowden is he's a patriot in the true sense of the term, and, Obama should pardon him and let him come back.
He created a national conversation that needed to be created.
Yeah.
And I believe that these other NSA people that came forward anonymously, I don't think they would have came forward if it wasn't for Snowden.
Well, and then there was another guy. There's a guy that actually just got arrested earlier this week for pinching something. And the details are sketchy because, of course, like you mentioned, it's all top secret, so we can't really talk about it. There's more and more of that happening. The truth of the matter is that whatever we tell our own population becomes the knowledge of our enemies too. But the reality that we don't talk about is that our enemies have this information already.
They have it because they're hacking into us and everything else. Yeah. The people who don't have it is our people.
Yeah. Certain members of Congress who aren't sitting on those committees where they get that stuff.
Sure, exactly.
But in any event, it's something that ought to happen. It's something that needs to happen. I don't think it'll happen until after we have an event, and I just hope that it's small enough that it doesn't kill, 50% of the population. But, if they, we hacked the grid and we turned off the lights in Washington, D.C., and we left them off for 3 months. That's a statement. Isn't necessarily going to wipe out thousands of people from starvation or lack of sewage facilities. But it's a statement, And hey, you might get
that would be a very painful statement.
You might get a little motivation at that point. And now, having said that, I'm sure the FBI is going to be like, "Hey, what's this guy talking about?" NSA scooping out stuff up out of the whatever. Guys, we're having a conversation. America. Please don't arrest me. I'm trying to go to my cabin.
Well, let's talk about the Snowden movie that just came out.
Yeah.
And one thing that they pointed out of how Americans are being watched. Everybody's being watched.
Oh, yeah.
And they can get it absolutely everything.
Yep.
Now, they also pointed out that Americans are being watched more than other citizens, which is interesting. They're watching the U.S. citizens more than other people.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that they pointed out was that we don't necessarily use this for security. We use it to further our position in the world economically.
Yep.
And that is something that people don't realize. And our enemies are not even our enemies. People around the world have been talking about this for a long time. Media in other countries talk about this. The one group of people in our country that don't know about it is our own citizens.
Yep.
Because they think that everything we do is for good purpose. And, hey, I would rather be in power than not be in power, because if you're not in power, then somebody else is going to do that to you. So there is an argument there. But the same point, should we really be using our national defense dollars to further corporate interests all over the world?
And the answer is no, but we're gonna. The fact of the matter is that the way it works in Washington, D.C. is the people who can fund re-election campaigns get paid attention to. If you're a government contractor and are getting paid God knows how many millions of dollars to do work, and then you go turn around and fund some campaigns with some of the profits, well, then you get more work. So it's citizens of the United States pay taxes, and we can have a whole conversation about that, so let's not. But the taxes go into a big pot of money for the members, our elected officials. Their primary thought is, how do I get some of that tax money to turn up in my election campaign? Seriously, really, there's a link.
Yeah,
okay?
Exactly.
And so, yeah, it's like we spend money on guns and bombs and planes and ship, and then we make sure that the countries that we're cultivating as allies also buy their stuff from us. So then there's foreign aid programs where the foreign aid goes out and then it comes back in the form of purchases to United States companies, and those companies, in gratitude to their elected officials, just make sure that the campaign gets funded, and then they're reelected and they serve again. And the revolving door that exists between, when you're finally voted out of office, or you decide you've had enough and you retire, you go into private practice as an analyst or a lobbyist.
They make great money when they get out of government.
And they make 8 times as much money as they did as a senator or congressman. And now they're busy trying to get back into that pool of money because it affects their paycheck. And it's in a free market economy. Some of this is just, it can't be avoided. You just have to understand the game and play the game the way it's played. But for those of us who are just pawns in the machine, well, for all the spying that the government is doing on its own citizens is nothing compared to the kind of information collection that Google and Microsoft and Yahoo and every...
Well, yeah, the data that they have on everyody is absolutely
like
amazing.
Whatever you thought was private between you and someone else ain't private, because it's the someone else put it in a database and it's out there.
Exactly.
Yeah, the only secrets you can have are the ones you're keeping to yourself, and maybe not those.
Well, I have another show that I want to do on that was recently put out in July, that there's $9.3 trillion of unapproved adjustments. They just can't find them. They just had to do a one-time adjustment and the military budget.
Yeah.
9.3 trillion. I don't know if you heard about that.
No.
That was put out in July.
No, I haven't followed that.
Yeah, I tweeted that and I said, okay, I need to find somebody that knows about this because that's my next big investigation is to figure that out. But yeah, it's a military site.
Yeah.
.mil, and they got it there, and I'm like, how can that be? The budget's only like 1.5 trillion or whatever, and you're doing an adjustment in 2005 of 9.3.
Yeah, and I wonder, one of my other fun military conspiracy theories is a two-parter. The first one is, when did we decide that we wanted trained and battle-experienced citizenry in the United States? Because when you take National Guard units and you send them off to Iraq and Afghanistan, this flies in the face of the purpose of the National Guard entirely. But now, instead of a professional army, what you really have is a whole bunch of everyday people who have all of a sudden been battle-hardened. Okay, so my first question is, why? Why would you do that? They keep cutting the professional army, get smaller and smaller and smaller, and so then we pull in these sort of like, do we want to call them paramilitaries? I mean, the National Guard units, originally it was a great way to get away from once a weekend and for 2 weeks of summer and go play guns in the woods.
It's like having contractors for business. You don't have to really hire them.
That's the second part is, when did it become more economical to hire contractor groups like Blackwater or whoever? These guys get paid way more money than they ever got paid as soldiers. So they come out of the military, they're recruited by military contractors, they're paid way more money. Isn't that more expensive than having more professional soldiers? I mean, I don't get it.
Oh, when you look at the costs, it's crazy. It's crazy.
And so I'm a little lost here, but there seems to be a new way of fielding military forces that it's a change and it's interesting, and I haven't quite figured out exactly why or who it serves or why it's beneficial to the government to do it that way, but hey, whatever.
The privatizing of all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole nother show that we can talk about. You're always so fun to have on. I love talking about this stuff. These are actually very serious issues, as we both know.
Yep.
But it's really fun to talk about.
Yeah.
What can people do to learn more? Because I know you have a blog. I know you have all these interesting things you do. So do your little spiel here.
Yeah, I've got a blog at wiseguyscybersecurity.com where I cover mostly issues that people face day to day and could do something about if only they'd change a behavior or something like that. So my focus tends to be very much of not on the global issues, more practical for the individual. We are in an election year, and we seem to be given a choice between two really not popular choices. I'm encouraging my politically motivated friends everywhere to consider a third party. I'll be voting Libertarian this year for Gary Johnson, but hey, vote Green. My goal, if I had one, I do, but I'm not doing anything to implement it. So it's not really a goal if you're not putting anything behind it. I think it would be stunningly great if 25 to 33% of the people who vote at the polls don't vote Republican or Democrat, because
so that we can create a third party.
Well, maybe you can, maybe you can't, but you can send a heck of a message. Even 18%, if there were like 15 to 18% of the voters who voted third party, the major parties would have to go, hey, we're like losing it. We're doing it wrong. Something's happening here. But people keep the old saw is, hey, voting for a third party is throwing your vote away. This year, I think you can basically throw your vote away no matter where you vote. So vote with your heart instead of your head. Pick a candidate that is someone you really that's espousing positions you really believe in, and vote them. And if you really want a big wall, across Mexico, fine, vote for that guy. But if you don't vote for him just because your dad always voted Republican. Hey, think for yourself. Do something new this year.
Well, unless you're like the beer commercial where they have that wall, but it's really short and they use it for putting their beer on.
Yeah.
Did you see the commercial?